Now, we just were talking about BlackRock. The idea of what it is, how dangerous it is, how alarming it is. And there's plenty more than just BlackRock, but in my opinion, it seems to be increasingly materializing into all roads lead back to BlackRock. In a sense that whether or not they're the world's largest asset management group, that there's very insider nefarious things happening. And given those things seem to happen all over throughout American politics, and corporate business and whatever. So that doesn't necessarily mean it ties directly to COVID-19, but I believe it does. And there's a lot of reasons why. And I've already shown you a lot of those in past shows. This one is the one I just did. COVID coup, the BlackRock takeover of American interests. Another one I hope you'll check out is the one right down here is a clip. The BlackRock takeover of America, brought to you by COVID-19. And there's one even before that, BlackRock's coronavirus bailout plan for the U.S. that was written before coronavirus began. Now, I'm not going to rehash all this stuff today, but I recommend you check these videos out. This one right here is in the show notes for you to read or listen to, watch. But I wanted to quickly just go over some of these so you realize it before we jump into this first point. Again, just remember that they were involved in 2008, the bailout. At the time, the largest transfer of wealth in American history. They stole that from you. They were involved with this right through the process, which I argue made it worse. And of course, then right after they did whatever they did, they wildly benefited and suddenly became the number one asset manager in the world right after 2008 collapse. Surely that benefited them. And we have the Economic Forum team that Trump put together in 2016. Names Jewish billionaire to head the economic advisory team. This was Steven Schwartzman, but this is actually the point of this was not to talk about him necessarily, but the fact that Fink, trying to just use this to show you here, maybe not going to get to it, but Fink, I highlight Fink's name in this article right below this point. Well, Fink was also on this. Larry Fink is the CEO of BlackRock. So in 2016, Donald Trump tapped him, as well as many other people, on a 16-person team to advise them on economic policy going forward. Well, everything else, I mean, we also talked about the idea that Donald Trump's tax law is one of the primary reasons it surged them to $6 trillion in assets. And we know that this one, here we go. Dang it. Trying to get to this one part right here. That they made a plan to bail out the U.S. government. Or rather just, the collapsing of the U.S. economy before coronavirus began. All of these are very suspect things. But why, right? Well, I would argue that an easy example, before I even get to the point, if we're actually looking for a motive who benefits or why somebody might create something, especially for those that think this is a complete, massive hoax, which I think it's a hoax however you spin it. Because even if there really is a virus, they're lying to us about it. They're still lying to you. It's still a hoax. They're still pretending it's something it's not, right? Maybe a stretch on the word hoax, but it is still essentially the same idea. We're being lied to. But even for those out there that feel that there's really nothing there, do you really need a better reason than to essentially take control of the most powerful financial country in the world, the most militarily powerful country in the world, to take control over their policy? I think that might fit the bill for creating a global pandemic, wouldn't you say? But that, all that aside, if you want another motive, here you go. This was sent to me today. BlackRock listed twice, in fact, on this top holders of stocks investments in 3M, which makes masks, right? We just talked about this. What is the one thing that seems to be the primary focus that it guarantee is making so much money they can't even see right now? That is in regard to masks. Everyone needs them. Everyone's buying them everywhere. They're making new versions of it. There's new kinds, there's new styles, there's new pictures on them. This is a booming industry all of a sudden, right? But recognize before that, it was still a very lucrative industry. Before this all happened, there were still medical purposes. There was still all kinds of reasons to need them overseas, right? Whatever. The bottom line is it wasn't suspicious to invest in 3M when they did, which was before this. Right? But the point is, there's a profit motive. At the very least, before we even get into reasons why I think there's more nefarious things going on here, to have a company who's now driving the bus in regard to the U.S. financial policy have a clear profit motive in something that does that not lean? Do you think they're going to not make a choice that would make them another $1 billion if that was something that would happen? right? Even if that may be detrimental slightly to the American interest, maybe, right? Let's not pretend like a company like this that's not exactly what they do on a daily basis. But I find it very revealing, first of all, that we have BlackRock Fund Advisors and BlackRock Investment Management listed as two of the top holders of one of the companies making the most. I mean, 3M is the primary company. And I'll even show you why more in a moment. But check this out. As you go even further, not even past the top holders, BlackRock is listed 7 different times on the holders of 3M company. BlackRock Institutional Trust Company, BlackRock Fund Advisors, BlackRock Group Limited, BlackRock Investment Management LLC, BlackRock Inc., BlackRock Advisors LLC, right? This seems totally legitimate. BlackRock Japan Company. I mean, I know BlackRock is the largest asset management company in the world, but why then would, I'm not going to get into that. Bottom line is, to make this very simple to understand, this is an obvious suspicious moment. To realize that they are wildly and multifaceted, in multiple ways invested in the leading company making the product that is clearly a huge profit motive in this whole thing. So you need to ask yourself whether this was something that they are involved in, driving, right? I mean, the same thing we should ask about the US government or the Chinese government or anybody else. How can they benefit from the situation? And would they push it forward? Well, yes, based on everything else we've seen, the fact that they made a plan about this before this all started, it seems that maybe they were just putting their pieces in the right places because they knew about something that we didn't. Just maybe. But on top of that, I didn't even know that 3M, the very company we're talking about, actually has a patent for the N95 respirator mask. The one thing that they're pushing, the one thing, it has to be N95, right? That's all we hear. Has to be. Even though we now know that it's nonsense because these masks don't really do anything in regard to what we're talking about other than stopping spit from flying from your mouth onto somebody else. The idea that this is, the science behind that is pretty damn clear. Now, the point is, a patent for the N95, the one thing. So we see a tie between the one company who has the one thing that they're clearly pushing, even though they know at the time that wasn't really, there was a reason for that. Why? That company is tied to BlackRock, which is heavily invested in 3M, which BlackRock is now driving the financial policy of the US government. What do you know? I find that really hard to miss, guys. But either way, there's a profit motive. Right? Aside from all of the speculation, we have a clear profit motive for what's driving this. Now, let me ask you this. If they know that this is going to be a very lucrative business, the whole masks, new normal, and all the stuff, especially what we're going to get into next, do you think that they would just, let it go away? Or would they hold on to this and create the new normal and force you to buy masks and force you to have one with you at all times? It'll be the new yellow vest, right? It'll be the new thing you have to keep in your car all the time. Got to have a mask. Against the law if you don't. Make sure you got your tracking ring on, as we're going to get into next. Now, that in and of itself, we would argue for control and different things we've already talked about. But then you add on top the millions of dollars, billions really, but millions in regard to this investment that's tied back to BlackRock and then back to the U.S. government. It's hard to miss.